Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Sematary Club. Hi guys, we are on the next short story in Night Shift, which is I Am the Doorway. And this one is much more of a science fiction-y type story. We are in Florida this time because our main character was an astronaut. So he, would be by Cape Canaveral, which means Maine is not really viable, I guess. So Richard and Arthur are sitting on a porch discussing a murder. Arthur is convinced that he has killed someone, and he is trying to convince Richard that this happened. Richard doesn't believe him. One of the reasons that Richard does not believe Arthur is because Arthur has been crippled in a space mission where the landing was faulty. He and his partner, his fellow astronaut Corey, they had gone up into space and had gone to Venus, and when they came back, their parachute did not deploy correctly, and Corey was killed. Arthur was crippled, so he cannot walk. He is in a wheelchair, and this is mostly what gives Richard pause. So as Arthur is telling Richard this crazy story, we find out that there's something very, very wrong with Arthur. Quote, "Beneath the bandages, my new eyes stared blindly into the darkness the bandages forced on them. They itched." Page 62. So we find out that he has eyes in his hands, and he has tried blinding them, and they don't like it. So, whoa. With this Project Zeus, Corey and Arthur go up and circle Venus. And Venus scared Arthur. He felt uncomfortable up there. He felt things were not right. Quote, "It was like circling a haunted house in the middle of deep space." That's on page 64. So after the accident, when Corey has died and Arthur has been paralyzed, years later, he starts seeing inflammation on his hands, and he starts getting little cuts in his fingers. And all of a sudden, it progresses to the point where these slits in his fingers have eyes starting to form behind them. Quote, "There were eyes peering up at me through splits in the flesh of my fingers," on page 68. Arthur is able to see through the eyes that are in his fingers. He can see what the aliens are seeing. So this entire short story reminds me of a cross between Eyes of Laura Mars and The Astronaut's Wife. I don't know if you've seen either of those movies. I will definitely be doing a review on Eyes of Laura Mars at some point. But those two movies combined are what I think of when I read this short story. So these aliens that Arthur has been inhabited by are finally manifesting within his hands. Quote, "They're forcing the doorway open a little at a time," on page 69. So they are using Arthur to learn and to observe what it's like on Earth. And they are not happy. They don't like it. They are disgusted. Arthur is able to sense and feel that disgust himself. And he has found that poking the eyes causes pain. Bandaging up the eyes so that they can't see is uncomfortable and itchy. And basically, he ignores the fact that he's got these weird hand eyes and ignores them until one day the eyes make him kill a local boy who's walking down the beach. And he bludgeons this boy because the eyes are able to use him like he is a robot. He is incapable of moving his legs, but the aliens are able to take control of his body and move his legs and murder someone. there's a disturbing image of his crippled body that's being animated in an awkward, shambling fashion, chasing after this kid and murdering him. And he is out of control. He's not able to stop this from happening. So at the end of this story, Richard and Arthur go out to the place where the murder allegedly happened, and Richard doesn't find anything. He digs and digs and digs, doesn't find a body. He doubts Arthur. Arthur says that as a last resort, he will unveil the eyes for Richard. So he does it. He takes the bandage off, shows Richard the hand eyes. Richard freaks out. Arthur knows that the eyes are going to try and kill Richard, so he tells Richard to run away. Richard does, and the eyes summon lightning from above, and it incinerates Richard. So Arthur is totally freaked out. He has a plan. He goes home. He plunges his hands into kerosene, burns his hands, and they are irreparably damaged. He now has hooks, and it's 7 years later, and he is seeing the familiar beginnings of those creepy little eyes, but this time it's on his chest. So he is going to off himself. He's going to kill himself because there's no killing this. And I really like the fact that it's got the ick factor with eyeballs coming through places that they're not supposed to, especially given the fact that your hands are one of the worst places to have eyes growing. I don't know. Back of the head is another one. I don't know if you guys have seen the Dick Van Dyke Show and the Walnut episode with the eyes in the back of the head. Yeah, it's a good little story. It makes you uneasy. It isn't too alien-esque, and like I said, I enjoy the Eyes of Laura Mars type situation where he can see what the aliens are seeing, and it's one of those things where, you know, you don't tell anyone, you can't solve the problem, you take matters into your own hands, things get out of control, and you think you solved it, but then you didn't, and you have to just bow out. So, I Am the Doorway. Good short story. Makes me like it even though it's about alien stuff, and I think that would actually make a really great Halloween costume if you could get bandages and little like maybe googly eyes for your hands. I think that'd be really cool. So that is it. I will see you next week for The Mangler. That is the next story, the next short story. The Mangler is really good. I'm looking forward to rereading that one. And I will see you next week. Have a spooky day.